Good evening and welcome, candidates, those who are in the audience and those viewing at home. As a courtesy to all present, please take this moment to silence and store your cell phones. I'm Eleanor Levin, member of the League of Women Voters of Johnson County, and I will be your moderator for the evening. This forum is being live streamed on the League's Facebook page. It is also being filmed for rebroadcast on the 3 public education and government channels in Iowa City, Coralville, and North Liberty. Please check their websites for specific scheduling. Additional information about candidates may be found on the League's vote411.org website. The League of Women Voters is a volunteer, nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes any party or candidate, which is why we have the policy that campaign literature is welcome outside of this room following the forum, and no buttons, signs, or literature can be worn or distributed inside of this room. The League does take positions after considerable study of issue and acts to influence decision makers on those issues. We work not only to register voters, but also to provide them with information on issues to assist their participation in government. Membership is open to anyone ages 16 of age or older. Membership forms are available on the table in the lobby. Join us. We can use your time, your talent, and your financial resources. League members advocate and inform voters. Democracy works best when more people are involved. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates. All viable candidates have been invited to participate. After the candidates have been introduced, they will each have 2 minutes for opening remarks. We will then present questions to them, starting with one from the League, followed by one submitted on cards by you in the audience. League members are distributing cards and pencils for you to write questions on. You may submit as many written questions as you wish. Hold up the cards, and a League member will collect them throughout the forum and bring them to me to be read. Questions that fall in the same general category may be consolidated. If time does not allow for all questions to be addressed, you may contact the candidates directly after the forum. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. Due to the time frame, there will be no rebuttals. Near the end of scheduled time for this event, each candidate will have 2 minutes for closing remarks. Speaking order will be rotated throughout the evening. Helen Daly, League member, is our timekeeper tonight, using cards to alert the candidate when time is about up and when time is up. Tonight, we have 3 candidates running for 2 Coralville City Council seats on the ballot for a 4-year term. 2 candidates are incumbents, Mitch Gross and Jill Dodds. And Sandra Alvira is a challenger. Let's get started with the opening statements. Please speak directly into your microphone so that you can be heard here and over the television broadcast. Let's begin with your 2-minute opening statements, starting with challenger Sandra Alvira.
I am Sandra Alvira, and I'm coming from Puerto Rico. And I wanted to work for Coralville, and I want you to give me the opportunity to be, in the city council, working with the mayor and making decisions with the community about things that I had to see, with a lot of things that I am concerned. So I am very happy to be here. So I hope that your question I can answer.
Thank you very much. Our next opening statement will be from Jill Dodds.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for holding this forum for us. It's very important to all of us, I think, that we discuss issues that are involving our community. My name is Jill Dodds. I have had the privilege of being on the City Council for the past 8 years. I am a local business owner. I operate Simple Abundance Childcare with my husband, Jeff. And I'm running for re-election because I really enjoy being on the council and representing the constituents' views and their voice. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we will hear an opening statement from Mitch Gross.
Great. Thank you very much, Eleanor, and thank you to the League of Women Voters. I myself am a member, and my wife's a former board member of the organization. As a former government teacher, I applaud the work that you do, because right now, more than ever, it's important that we have an active and engaged citizenry. I think maybe that's why we have a smaller crowd, because people are watching. I think there's another debate going on tonight that might be getting a little bit more play than we are as well. But I'm seeking another term to the City Council. I ran in 2007, was the first time I ran. And part of that was, as a government teacher, just as I was talking about, I felt it was really important to be a role model for my students as I was talking about citizenship and how to be an active and an engaged citizen. So I ran for City Council, and I'm really proud of my record over the past 12 years. And I'm running again because I still feel like I have a lot to offer our community. I have 3 young children who live in our community. I'm an educator in our community. I believe very passionately in being an engaged and involved citizen. And I've always committed myself to public service. So I'm looking forward to having a wonderful conversation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you to all the candidates for those opening remarks. The first question of the evening is from the League of Women Voters. 1,500 Coralville households cannot afford their housing and earn less than 50% of the area's average income. What should the Coralville City Council do to make sure that households who can only afford $500 or $600 a month for housing have opportunities in Coralville? Ms. Dodds, can we start with your answer?
Well, this has been something that's been a priority for the council for our last goal-setting sessions or 2. So this is something that we've been putting a lot of thought into. We do a lot with tax credits for at least workforce housing. For lower income, we now have the Coral Ridge apartments that we worked with the Iowa Finance Authority to have those built so that those are anywhere from 30 to 60% below the AMI. We work with Habitat for Humanity. If we have buildings that the city gets that are going to be condemned, we purchase those and give those to like the Housing Trust Fund to work on rebuilding for people. And then we also have grants that we offer people up to $25,000 to try to fix things in their home that would help better their environment.
Thank you. Mr. Gross.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And like my colleague Jill, this is an area I feel very, very proud of what we have been able to accomplish on our council. I know when I first got elected in 2007, it was a topic that wasn't talked about quite a bit. And then as Jill just said at our last goal-setting session, it was voted as a priority. So I'm very, very proud of that. I think we got to look at this in 2 ways. First of all, what have we done and what do we need to do? We've done quite a bit in the last 10 or 12 years. We have partnered with Habitat for Humanity. The city itself purchases dwellings and buildings, and then in partnership with Johnson Housing Trust Fund, as well as Habitat, we use those for citizens that are in need. But one of the things we need to do a better job of is working in coordination with the folks who are building the homes and trying to come up with some incentives to make sure that people who are building homes at price points that reach those who are in that affordable housing threshold. Because right now, a lot of the new development that's going up is out of the price range of folks that need it. So those are some of the areas that I would work on.
Thank you. Mrs. Alvira, your response.
I will say, by my experiences in here, I came to here in 2015, and I have been seeing, a lot of housing problem here, everywhere. Not only, in all Iowa, comparing with the New York, I was living there. It's very expensive. Court fee, is expensive too, a lot of things, beside housing is really making the people package, poor. So I am concerned about that we need some kind of program, to work with the credit of the people and to try, to put in some more, programs for the government, because we are on lack of the government, money is spending wrong way. I believe, that we need, more community workers sometimes too, because we don't know the need of the people directly. And sometimes, it's hard for the people, to have a home because of the credit problem. And then really, as homeless people, is too many here too. So job program sometimes is not really good because a lot of people, they don't have a steady work. So it's not working, for the people.
Thank
So
you. Ms.
I-
Elvira, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay,
Thank
go
you
ahead.
for that response. Let's start with our first audience question. That would be, what would be your personal highest priority for your next council term if you are elected? Start with Mr. Gross, please.
I'm not sure if I ever just have one singular goal. I think three areas that I'm really looking at focus on. Number one, I think with the city's undertaking a pretty massive arena project, and it's still, we're in the completion phase right now. So I think it's really important that we foster some good stewardship over that project and make sure that when it's completed, it's a project that benefits not just the region but the citizens in Coralville. So a resident can say, hey, this is why the city did this, and this is how it's benefiting us as a community. So I think making sure there's that local connection to the arena. The second is, really working at trying to figure out a way to expand and modernize our Parks and Recreation building. Our population has grown quite a bit. Being the assistant principal at Northwest Junior High, I see how that building is used all the time, and it's it needs a little bit of some freshening up. So that'd be another priority. And then my last priority is always to make sure, it's why I ran for council the first time in 2007, it's why I continue to do so now, is to make sure that all of our residents are enjoying our community, not just certain people in certain neighborhoods or certain people at certain incomes, but that every citizen in Coralville has the opportunities that our city affords them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Elvira,
Can you
your highest priority during your council term if elected.
Well, my higher priority is to work with the need of the community and have them, to help them, because we don't know the need of the people, here, because I have been having a lot of concern from the neighborhood. So I have been trying, to go to the mayor and to let to know him, the need, of the people here. So that's my priority, to help the people, to supply the need that they have in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Ms. Elvira. And Ms. Dodds.
Well, my past priorities have been making sure that the impoverished community members are not forgotten. That's with food insecurity, with the food pantry, and working on affordable housing. What I would like to focus on a little bit now in this coming term is joining with other cities in Johnson County to work on climate change. We have a long way to go in meeting some things that I hope we can still have time to turn back. So that's going to be my new priority. Thanks.
Thank you all for those responses. Our next question is, what do you see as one major challenge currently facing the city of Coralville? We will start with Mrs. Elvira.
I think the challenge for the mayor in this year is going to be to work, I think, in the environment things that is taking, a lot of agency to be difficult, to work with the community. And these people have to be more involved, in the regulation of the environment for the government. People don't understand, the regulations of the government. So sometimes it's a lot of people, that they doing like illegal things, sometimes. And we need to enforce those regulations so that the community can to know, how they can help the government to help them.
Thank you. Mrs. Dodds, I believe that you're next. Thank you. Sorry.
Well, I could talk about really big issues like debt and things like that, but honestly, one of the biggest challenges I think we have coming is our sign ordinance. It's something that every business person, when I talk to them, is concerned about. We have many requests. It's being updated. We haven't seen the draft yet to start discussing it. But I will tell you, I am thinking with the arena, we need a really nice electronic sign out there advertising what all needs to go up on that board, and maybe for the Center for the Performing Arts. And a lot of people aren't in agreement with me, and a lot are, so it'll be an interesting debate.
Thank you, Mr. Gross.
I think one of the problems that whoever's on council can't control is funding. And that's something that's been very frustrating. I think at the federal level in the last 8 years, you've seen a massive, massive decrease in federal funds. We talk about affordable housing. If we look at housing funds from the federal government, it's drying up. Unfortunately, that's kind of trickled down to the state government. The current legislature has not been very kind to cities and to municipalities based on some of the legislation they've passed, whether it be curtailing ordinances and laws that we've passed, or by threatening to take revenue away from us with a backfill program. So I think one of the challenges is making sure that we are still providing what our citizens need from a budgetary standpoint, while at the same point checking and keeping in check state and federal money that's coming in. And one way we've done that is really establishing good partnerships with nonprofits, other communities, to make sure that we're providing services that our citizens need.
Thank you for all of those responses. Our next question asks, would you each speak to the overall plan for building permits for the expansion of businesses, storefronts, strip malls that appear to be being built without pre-planned tenants? Is there oversight for all of this unused square footage? We will start with Mr. Gross. I'm sorry, with Ms. Dodds on this one. Apologies.
That's a very interesting question. What comes before the council is after a plan has been brought before the Planning and Zoning Committee, then it comes before us with their recommendations. A lot of times we're looking at design, we're looking if it meets the community plan, if it meets the zoning regulations, and all of those sort of things. It isn't really up to us who the tenants are. However, I do understand the concern about if there are empty storefronts sitting. At this point, I think we're doing fairly well. A lot of our contractors are setting up things with potential tenants before they build. And I think that if we encourage them to do that, that will help us along.
Thank you. Mr. Gross,
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Would you speak to the overall plan for building permits given the explosion or taking into account the explosion of businesses, storefronts, strip malls that appear to be being built without pre-planned tenants?
Yeah, so I guess to piggyback a little bit off what my colleague Ms. Dodd said, when we're issuing a permit, it's not necessarily a permit for a specific use. If there is if a private developer has a building and constructs that building, where it's a difficult position for a governmental body to say you can't put that kind of business there. Now, there are some exceptions to that. We do have community plans where there are specific uses of certain buildings and businesses, and we do update those quite a bit. For example, there's the Oakdale land use area, and it had, for example, one of the prescribed uses was VHS rental stores. Well, we took that out because no one's renting VHS tapes anymore. So we do kind of regulate types of businesses that go on, but to just say, if a private business person wants to take a risk, build a building, and have a storefront, the onus really is on them. One of the things we do look at is the property tax value. And it's how we fund our services to the communities by that property tax revenue. So I don't foresee a time where the city's going to say no to that type of building.
Thank you. And Mrs. Alvira.
I don't have, too much experiences about, that kind of type of, situation. But I believe, that the question is a little difficult for me. If you can repeat again.
The
slowly.
question being, citizens of Coralville see new developments being built, strip malls and storefronts, without a clear plan for the use of that space. What are your thoughts on the seemingly unoccupied new buildings?
I think, sometimes the people would not agree, with some of those buildings, that the government sometimes had to build, some companies. But I believe this is for the goodness of the community, and it's going to provide a lot of things, I don't know if we can, put like a obstacle, or something to say, don't do it, because, they had the permission already.
Thank you. To change course slightly, what specifically would you like to work on to address climate change here in Coralville? And what obstacles do you foresee in working with other communities in Johnson County or in Iowa State to accomplish such goals? Mr. Gross.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. And climate change and being active is a big priority of mine as well. And it, actually at our last joint meeting between the local entities, this issue was discussed. And the point I made, this is really an issue where we all need to be on the same page, because it doesn't do society or the environment good if Coralville is doing one thing, Iowa City is doing one thing, Johnson County is doing one thing. This is an issue that we really need to be on the same page. And I think the good news is, at least from a local standpoint, there's pretty universal agreement from that standpoint. It's not complete, but from a pragmatic standpoint of things that need to be done. So, adopting the mayor's climate plan has got to be a big step. We as a city, years ago, in fact, we built the first building in the state with green roof at LED certification with Northridge Pavilion. We have very strict codes regarding LEED certification that we require in our city. So I think we've been pretty proactive from that standpoint. But I think it's one that, as Jill mentioned, there's enough waiting that's happened that we need action now. And I think we're at a point where the local communities are on the same page with that.
Thank you. Mrs. Alvira.
And you repeat the question.
Yes. What specifically would you work on to address climate change here in Coralville? And do you foresee any difficulties working with the other communities in the area?
I believe that the people had to work as a team, Is Iowa City, need, Coralville, to support them. And I'm going to say real quick, in Puerto Rico is two mayors, from different towns, that they was supporting themselves and they was working together. So I think we can work, as a team, together, not for only Coralville, for the another community, that I've been concerned about Iowa City too and another community, so no Liberty. So I will be able to work with them too.
Thank you. Ms. Dodds.
Thank you. One of the things that Coralville has really progressed on is their stormwater management. You may notice when you drive around all of the pavers for the porous paving systems to absorb the water. We have bioswales, bioretention swales, everything set up to help filter that water so that it's cleaner before it goes back into our creeks and rivers. That helps saves on a lot of energy as we're going through there. Like Mitch said, we're talking about green infrastructure that we've done. I think the priority for me would be to get an inventory done of our climate areas, whether that be buildings, transportation, how we take care of waste in businesses and in government, as well as inspiring homeowners to help recycle more, compost, those sort of things. So I would like to see first where we stand and where we could show the most improvement after getting an inventory done like Iowa City did.
All right. Thank you for your responses. What opportunities are there in Coralville for things like bus stop shelters? I believe, I'm sorry. Is Ms. Alvira, you are our first respondent on this one. What needs to be done for the Coralville bus stop shelters?
I'm trying to understand your question. It's just the last thing, bus stop.
The shelters, where
Shelters.
at the bus stops, are they appropriate? Should they be adjusted,
I think
changed?
it's a little difficult, you know, when the snow coming. It's a little open, and I believe that maybe they can do it in another way, so that the people can feel more comfortable, because it's in the below, you know, zero. I am very sad, you know, because I never taken a bus before, maybe 2 times. But for the people that had to take the bus, it's really difficult for them. So maybe they need to fit that. You know, I don't know how, you know, maybe doing in a different way, but it is awful.
Thank you. Ms. Dodds?
We've talked about that there's a lot of different issues with that, cost, maintenance, ADA type of things. I think one thing that Coralville has that's very helpful is the system that you can, with your smartphone, find out where the bus is, when it's going to be there within a few minutes, and help so that you're not standing out at that bus stop, hopefully for an extended period of time. We also have our intermodal facility that it's very nice if you can park there and ride on any of the bus systems. We have the 360 that's now going to Cedar Rapids. A lot of different things that we can work on for transportation, so hopefully we don't have everybody standing out in the winter weather in Iowa too long.
Thank you. And Mr. Gross, your response?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'm really proud of our transit system. We're the smallest town in Iowa that has full-fledged transit, so I think that's something for a town of 20,000 people to be very, very proud of. I'm very proud of that. And as Jill said, we've discussed about covering all the bus stops with federal regulations based on what those bus stops have to be, the materials that they have to be made of, and some other regulations. It's just cost prohibitive to have every single one covered. Having said that, we've tried to be strategic in making sure that a lot of the bus stops are in places where you can wait indoors. And then that's where we did invest in the BOGO app, which tells when your bus route's coming. It's pretty accurate. So, for example, one of our most busiest bus stops is Coral Ridge Mall. So the way that works is actually an on-screen arrival and departure screen inside the mall that people can wait for their bus in real time and know when it's arriving. So, having said that, not everyone's covered, so there'll be some times that the folks will be out in the elements, and while it's unfortunate, I'm so proud that we were able to provide that kind of transportation in a town our size.
Thank you all. Coralville has one of the highest tax increment financing debts in the state. Does the city plan to address this issue? Should the city be addressing this issue? And if so, how? Ms. Dodds.
Yes, this is always a big question, is the TIF. Coralville uses TIF a lot, as everyone knows. We use that for employment retention, economic growth, cleaning up some of our brownfields area, and community betterment projects. All of our projects that we've been doing, we've just had the first mall runoff. Is that what you call it? When the mall came off of the roll, and that produced a lot of extra, probably $20 million, I think, for other governments to use in their general fund. This is going to be very important now as different things come off the tax roll for us, too, in our general fund, that we're going to be able to use this funds for other things, hopefully decreasing our debt is one of my priorities.
Thank you. Mr. Gross.
Yeah, this is a pretty complicated question for a 1-minute answer. And there's really two questions here, because there's a question about the use of TIF and the use of debt. So I heard it more about a debt question, and I think it was, what's the city doing about this? Well, obviously the city has a plan to pay off debt. There is a high level of debt. I don't think anybody disputes that. I get a little frustrated when the perception is that, we're just kind of spending willy-nilly without a plan. I mean, here's the chart to pay off the debt. Right there, 20% of the debt will be paid off in 5 years. 50% of the debt will be paid off in about 20 years, and 98% of the debt will be paid off in 30 years. So having a 30-year amortization rate on the debt, I think, is a pretty good payoff. But we take these decisions very, very, very seriously. I've got 3 young kids. I'm a public school employee. It's not like there's money floating around everywhere. So we're I feel we're pretty thoughtful when we're making these decisions, and we're always making these decisions with how does it get paid off. That's a very important piece of the plan, and there is a plan to pay that off. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Elvira, the Coralville debt burden, do you have thoughts, concerns? What would you bring to the council on the topic?
Maybe I don't have no answer for that question, because I cannot visualize what you are trying to tell me in terms of the language. But as I see it, read it, maybe I can answer. But by my ear, I cannot to answer that.
So with Coralville having a higher level of debt on its financial books than the surrounding communities, are there concerns? Should that be addressed? Should the city of Coralville be making changes?
I believe that not only Coralville, but that's my place. Have deaf is the whole government in United States, but I believe that I don't think that we're gonna pay up that thing, in 1 year, 2 years, like that he said. It's gonna take time, but it will be, something that the community, be concerned, because if we can work with the community and with the government at the same time, maybe we can do something to pay up that. I don't know. It's something idea, we can, adjust to that, because no one is working for the community sometimes, people, they can be a candidate, and they can win. Sometimes they forget about the deaf.
Thank you. Thank you. What is developing, or what do you see as a developing with recycling in Coralville? Mr. Gross.
Yeah, I think that's an area that we've really done a lot of good work on. One of our primary responsibilities is providing good services to the community, and one of the things I worked on years and years and years ago was trying to improve garbage and recycling pickup. And communities all across America are having issues with recycling, because we've done such a good job of recycling. A lot of things we recycle now are not worth a lot of money. So places have said, we're not going to take this, we're not going to take this, we're not going to take this. And there's other market factors. For example, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, there was no Amazon. So now we're getting all these cardboard boxes and things delivered to our home. So we've been pretty proactive in trying to address that. We probably need a bigger space. One of the complaints we get in Coralville is that the cardboard piles pile up, and then if you get some wind or this, that, it blows over. So if anything, we probably need to expand the space that we've used, but we've also coordinated and collaborated with Johnson County, who has their own specific recycling person for the county to work at. I think, as a city, we've been pretty committed to recycling from that standpoint, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you. Mrs. Elvira, your thoughts on recycling in Coralville?
I found one person when I was doing, my signature, over the street, down the street, that she told me about, I know that we are talking about recycling, And this is kind of that she was feel, that the manner of the recycling here, is no good. That they need to sort, the things more better because it's affecting her in some of the way. And she asked me, to tell the mayor or to tell someone, to make a changes, in the recycling, how they do it because it's not effective for they, to do the recycling for they is difficult.
Thank you for sharing that. Ms. Dodds, your response?
Thank you. Well, ever since the Iowa City landfill had decided that corrugated cardboard isn't going to be allowed anymore, I think we've done a lot better in having all of the cardboard recycled. It's helped since we've moved to the new location with the recycling that it's no longer just certain hours that it's open 24/7. So that's available all of the time. One thing I think that we could improve on is that we do recycling for homes and I think duplexes, but probably not like condos and apartment buildings. So I think that's something that has been discussed, but not a solution has been found yet. So I think we need to continue to work towards that.
Thank you. Mr. Gross, your response?
I started this one.
Oh, I'm so
That's all
sorry.
right. But if you give me an extra minute,
No,
yeah,
no, you're good.
I'll take it.
No.
I'm so sorry. I was distracted by our flood of questions. Next up being, how can Coralville residents be attracted to the Iowa River Landing region, to the Coralville area in general? Ms. Elvira, I believe you're starting this one.
I know that you don't want to hear my experiences, but one of the person told me, when I was doing my signature again, she's concerned about I think that street that is down River Landing that they did to go to the small is too short. She said too dangerous. It's gonna be, good, for Coralville, to have more businesses, and to have more programs for the people to make the business and to trying to do Coralville more, attractive, to come. Like No Liberty is different. No Liberty, is kind of more people there. In stores, everywhere, pharmacies, gas station. But in Coralville is something that is missing. So, but still, it's a lot of people coming over here. I know that for sure. So we need more attractive things, in terms, of the people can to come more to Coralville.
Thank you. Ms. Dodds.
The Iowa River Landing is 180 acres of mixed use. It's going to be about everything that you can imagine down there. We have retail, we have dining, we have residential. We just got done signing off on some senior housing developments that are going to go up down there. The Extreme Arena is going to be huge. We have the University of Iowa medical office buildings. We have restaurants, we have hotels. It's all right there, all within a walkable area for people to enjoy. And I think that the arena is going to bring even more things in, besides Trader Joe's, of course. So, thank you.
Mr. Gross.
Yeah, I think we've done a good job, to be honest, of attracting people to that area. In fact, if anything, I hear complaints about parking or things like that. So, which is a good problem to have. I'm reminded this summer I was visiting some old friends in Boston who are from the area and was talking about, ironically, Trader Joe's, and they couldn't believe that Coralville had a Trader Joe's. So I pulled it up on Google Maps, and the response was, "Isn't that where the truck stop was, or where the strip club was, or this or that?" Well, they couldn't believe that this area in 2019 is the same area that, in their mind, back in the year 2000, was full of those monstrosities that was the first gateway to our community. So I'm really proud of what we've done. I think, as I went back to the arena, I want to make sure, though, that Coralville residents and Coralville citizens are benefiting from that. I want to attract people from other places, but I want it to be a spot where our families and our people and our residents can take their kids, their grandchildren, to get ice cream or to go to see a show or to go to a restaurant, to go shopping, to still keep that local piece and flavor as well. The other thing which is great about that, that's why we're keeping the Johnson County Historical Museum there, which will be a major, major part of the new IRL development.
Thank you. The next two questions are related, so I'm going to sort of fold them together. The primary question is the transit system looking to become more energy efficient with such things as electric buses or anything you can discuss? Should the Coralville transit system become more energy efficient? And then related, how is Coralville participating with Iowa City and the University of Iowa with the mass transit study? So this one will begin with Ms. Dodds.
Of course, I think that we should all have electric buses, but then there's that money issue that seems to always come back to haunt us. We put away money every year in the budget in our transit so that we can save up to replace buses every so many years. We've been doing a lot of that lately, so I think they're a lot more energy efficient than they were before. Besides that, I would like to hope that we aren't letting the idea of rail die. That's still a very big interest to a lot of us, so I want to look at that. I guess I'll stop there.
Thank you. Mr. Gross.
Yeah, I agree with what Jill said. I think we've done a pretty good job of from a technological and environmental standpoint, of keeping up with newest technology and from a bus standpoint as financially we can. I think we'd all, I think we'd have the votes on our current council to get electric busing if we had the infrastructure in place. Same with light rail. I mean, we've been huge proponents of having a light rail system throughout Johnson County and up into Lynn County. As far as your question about the study, Coralville did not participate this time. One of the reasons why there was not a lot of collaboration of when the study was, excuse me, was going to be done. So if you remember, First Avenue was pretty torn up. So the Iowa City wanted to do the study during that year. We didn't want to do it at that point because we didn't think we would get accurate data when our main arterial street is under construction in one lane. So we absolutely are for collaborating and trying to figure out, with our fellow municipalities, what works, what doesn't work. We just, I think, want to do it in a time when there's, not a lot of construction. It'd be like if we had asked Iowa City to do it if when Dubuque was closed, which they wouldn't have done it at that same point.
Thank you. Mrs. Alvira, what do you see as the need for energy efficiency in our transit system?
I'm trying to understand. For what I understand, what he's saying, in my candidate here too. We have a big gap on the transportation due to that the people have cars. I have been seeing, that it's difficult for the company, to go on. And this is maybe economical, for the Coralville mayor, whatever, to keep it up, this thing, even in the snow, running those buses without no people, because I have been inside on the buses, and it's no people there. It's just, more the university people, in different, campus transportation, and I see in Iowa City is more frequently, the people running the buses. So I don't know the second question that you are asking me, but what I can tell you, is that the government needs some more funds, to do something, for that company.
Thank you. Our next question is, what community services would you like to see added or enhanced in Coralville? We'll begin with Mr. Gross.
How are you defining community services?
Services to the community, defined as you see fit.
Right. Yeah. What Interesting enough, when 12 years ago, when I was at this very desk, was asked that same question, a little worded differently, and as I said in my earlier comment, one of the things that drives me to run for this office is to advocate for those who need somebody to do so. And actually, at the time, I suggested about starting a Coralville food pantry, which actually got some interesting and I would even say controversial responses by having a council member make that claim. And I'm very proud to say that I was one of the founders of the Coralville Food Pantry. A lot of us got together to start that organization. When I started on council, we've seen a 32% increase in our human services budget, social services budget, from when I started. Very, very proud of the work that we've done from that standpoint. I think something new I'd like to see as we have seen on a national stage, and I say this as a first-generation American and son of an immigrant, some of the repudiation we've seen of immigrants and refugees that joining forces with Welcome America, which Cedar Rapids has just done, of making sure that we as a community are doing everything that we can to be inclusive, to tell folks coming here that we want you, we welcome you, and that you, too, are an important part of the fabric of our community.
Thank you. Mrs. Elvira, your response. Community services that you would like to see added or enhanced in Coralville. Services that the local government can offer to its citizens.
I'm very concerned about those programs. One program, that I would like to see in Coralville that I'm not seeing here is for the youth people, for the young people. And for the elderly people, I believe, I don't know because they maybe know more than me because they have the experience, and to see in working with the mayor, and I'm not from here because I'm from Puerto Rico, so. But what I see, here is a lot of need, or a lot of programs. I would like to see it in here, and I would like to work for that because I have been see, a lot of need on the community for housing, for you people, rehabilitation programs, a lot of programs I would like to see here besides the one that they haven't already.
Thank you. Mrs. Dodds.
One that I wanted to mention that we're very proud of is we have 2 fire stations now in our small community, and one thing that we offer is room and board for perhaps somebody that's studying firefighting in college, anything like that. They stay on premises there so that we have a quicker response time. We have an extraordinarily high rating in the state of Iowa for our whole firefighting department. We're very proud of that. Future things that I'd like to enhance is continuing the process of what our Parks and Rec department is doing. I'm the liaison on our Parks and Rec. We have probably at least 20 miles of trails built now, and that we're not done yet. We're going to connect everywhere to Iowa City. We'd like to go out to Tiffin. We have cyclocross. We have the new single woodpecker bike trails that are going up. We have all of our baseball and our youth sports center. Everything's just been expanding so well so that there's almost something for everyone in our community. And now that we're going to have the arena coming, that Parks and Rec are going to partner with people out there so that all of our citizens can use that facility. That's going to be outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you. How would each of you, as a city council member, reach out to the diverse population within the city of Coralville? What issues do you believe are of particular importance to them in this community? Ms. Elvira.
This is tough question. Can you repeat again?
How would you reach out to the diverse population, the different peoples of Coralville? And what issues do you believe are important to those who are not necessarily the Iowan people imagine when they picture an Iowan?
One thing, that I have been seeing, is that people that they try, to support, the president. and then they are concentrating, in what is outside instead to, concentrating in Coralville, where we living. Sometimes when the people come in here and visit us, or maybe, when they come into Iowa, different places, I have been seeing, that it's hard, to make the people concentrate, in the place that we are. We are in Coralville right now, and we need to work for Coralville. And people sometimes, they concentrate in outcome things, not in the town. So we need to, the community to work with the community itself, in Coralville.
Thank you. Ms. Dodds.
I've had the pleasure of meeting several people of different cultures through the Workers for Social Justice community. We've worked with them on making sure that Coralville is offering at least the 10.10 for our minimum wage instead of the $7. Our library has an incredible amount of services, translation, iPads, these sort of things, computers that you can check out that's very helpful for them to help cross those language barriers. Let's see. I think our police department has done a really good job as well. And then finally, I think one thing that's been really good is the food pantry has been coordinating with, whether it's Parks and Rec, our library, or most recently over at the junior high, we're having community meals. And those can be foods of various local food sources, a lot of time cultural. And we get to all sit down. Sometimes 300 to 500 people come to these. And it's a very nice event to get to meet people and discuss our things that are alike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gross.
I think the most important thing we can do is sit down and listen. In my 12 years on council, I've held over 50 coffee with a councilman, which I meet people at local coffee shops throughout our community because I want to hear what's on everyone's mind. And I think, we want a community that is welcoming and inclusive and diverse. A diverse community is what makes a community strong. And I think we've done a really solid job. I think every community can always do better in this area. But things that I'm proud of that we have done, before, since I've been on council, Coralville's always been a community that's recognizing pride and giving our proclamation at Pride Week. The city of Coralville actually has the second highest percentage of African Americans in any community in Iowa after Waterloo. That's something we celebrate and we're proud of. One of the things I'd like to work on is how do we get younger people of color more engaged in our community, whether it be on, we have lots of boards and commissions, and how can we get folks more involved, because we have a lot of really powerful and important voices out in our community, and it's important that all of us listen to them.
Thank you all. What would you, as an elected official, recommend to state leaders to bridge the urban-rural divide in Iowa? Mr. Gross. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Dodds. I apologize.
One thing that I think would be helpful for us in Coralville is we used to have what's called home rule, where we got to make a lot of the local decisions ourselves. That seems to have gone by the wayside quite a bit lately, and it just always keeps coming up as we have things that we want to work on or things that we want to do, but we can't because it might be stricter than what the state code is. That's something that bothers me. I wish that we could legislate to have more home rule back here again, because we know what's best for our city. The one other thing would be to legislate for child care licensure. Child care has become a big issue in our community, and the biggest problem is that we can take care of 5 children without any regulation whatsoever. So I think if we had licensure across the board, you would have a whole lot more regulated slots available, and it would allow us to improve the quality because everyone would be inspected and meeting the same criteria.
Thank you. Mr. Gross.
Yeah, and this is something we do work on. We are, as a community, are in Des Moines a lot, trying to lobby legislators on particular issues. And I think the growing urban-rural divide is something that is, all parts of the state are dealing with. I'm from a rural county and obviously now live in Johnson County, but I think there's a lot of issues that we have to look at that are apparent. Water quality is a big issue that's impacting urban and rural Iowans, and having clean, safe water, that's in everybody's best interest. That should not be an urban or rural issue. Issues of healthcare, same thing. We're so fortunate to have the great healthcare that we have here in Coralville and Iowa State, but you just go 8-10 miles down the road in West Branch, they're in a different situation. So there's a lot of opportunities to work together to bridge the rural and urban communities. I'd be remiss to say, as an educator, if you look at the gaps between rural schools and urban schools and opportunities afforded to children, and now with technology, that really shouldn't be an issue, because if you're in a rural school with the Kirkwood Center right here in Coralville, you should be able to take any class in high school that you want to.
Thank you very much. Ms. Elvira, how would you advise state leaders to bridge the urban-rural divide in Iowa?
Sometimes, it's a lot of things, that the community need. And sometimes those, when you're trying to fit that, maybe the people that had to do it don't have no control over the state. And really, sometimes maybe we need to fit those issues, those things. And sometimes we have, like a line. And those rules, is difficult when you're trying to do something for the community and those state people is in the way. So we need a lot of things, to fit in Coralville. But I will not tell you, right now what I can fit, because, I'm not a city council yet. I just, a candidate for be a city council, so I don't know how people, can to address that.
Thank you. A significant concern is police policy in regards to de-escalation. Do we have a policy in place for our police officers that requires de-escalation in every situation? Are they trained in de-escalation techniques? Is this a concern in Coralville or of the Coralville City Council?
Well, I think issues of disproportionality and police brutality across the country have been on the forefront and have been issues of concern. I think we've been very proactive with that in Coralville. Our officers have CIT training, which is de-escalation training, implicit bias training. We take this very, very seriously. We focus a lot on community policing, where our police officers are actually out in the neighborhoods, getting to know residents, patrolling from the neighborhoods rather than being always dispatched out. So it's an issue that we've taken very, very seriously. But I've also, having said that, I've been very proud of the work that our police officers do, how they respond to the community. A lot of the, Coralville's in a unique spot because we're growing, and I think Joe referenced this earlier, but then we try to maintain our small town feel and character. Our police department still unlocks doors and things like that if you lock your keys in. So it's balancing all that out. But we've been pretty proactive and responsive to what's happened on the national level and have worked very, very hard to make sure that doesn't happen here in Coralville.
Thank you. Mrs. Elvira?
I'm trying to understand, the word escalation, and I have an idea. And I believe, that I cannot maybe, answer well. Leave, if you can explain to me, more specific.
Have you seen a concern in Coralville over or regarding police policy in handling potentially violent situations?
No, I don't see that, I really, I see it more in Iowa City, maybe, but no in Coralville.
Thank you. Ms. Dotz?
As Mitch said, we've run all of our police officers through the CIT training, which is, I think, is imperative to start. We recently got to hire a new police chief. I know that was one of the big questions that we talked with him about as we were interviewing candidates for this job, as what that policy and how that was going to be handled with the policy writing. We've been very fortunate that we haven't had big concerns too much yet in Coralville, as we have National Night Out, where the police department goes out and tries to get into the neighborhoods. We have them at events in the mall, at the Children's Museum, all over town. They visit the schools. The police department want kids to know that they're their friend, that they're there to help. And so I think once we start that at an early age, that will hopefully transfer up into their adult years.
Thank you all. Our next question asks, should developers be required to replace or provide topsoil in new housing developments to reduce runoff and improve water quality? So should the requirement be on developers to establish quality topsoil in new developments? Mrs. Elvira, this is a question to you. Let me know if it's unclear.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I phrased it clearly. so.
Yeah, you can ask again.
Should the developers of new housing developments be required by the city council or by policy to replace or provide topsoil to reduce to address the issue of ground soil running off due to the large amount of rain we occasionally experience in this area?
Well, I don't know, really, is the regulation, of the housing authority, by the government, it's going to be in this kind of replacement thing. But what I know, is that sometimes, some requirements, housing have for the government. And I don't have no clue, if he had to replace it or no, because I don't have the experience with that. But what I see, sometimes, what you mean with the topsoil is kind of the land or the rocks.
The land.
Because sometimes, in some of the housing, they put more rock. That topsoil. I don't know, what to tell you. But, I believe that is okay. They can replace it.
Thank you. Ms. Dotz?
I was the liaison on our stormwater management ordinance writing, so this one's an easy one for me. They are required to replace the soil quality restoration in our ordinances now.
And what effect does that have?
I think so far all the developers have been on board with it. As they dig, they can put that aside and replace and make sure that all of that tiling and retention walls and all of those things, I think is very important. And they've been working really well with us. We haven't had too much trouble.
Thank you, Ms. Dotz. Mr. Gross?
Yeah, I'd say my record's pretty clear. I voted for that ordinance as well and support having developers replace that level of topsoil for the reasons that were just said. We've got to do all we can to protect and to prevent soil erosion.
Thank you all. What role, if any, does the city and the city council have to play in encouraging first-time home ownership? Ms. Dodds.
We've been working to try to have a lot of different price points for home ownership in Coralville. Some of what's considered Old Town Coralville are still really nice foundational houses. They might just need a little bit of updating, whether it's roofs or heating or things like that. So we've been offering grants to work on that. We've also been working in the area of like Valley View, Eastview, that area over there. Each year we kind of pick an area that we kind of want to focus on, and we have funds that we can offer people to update those homes. And if they stay in those homes for 10 years, those loans are forgiven. And if they sell the home, then it's prorated what they have to do back. But they can have the entire loan forgiven if they stay in the home for 10 years. So we're trying to promote home ownership.
Thank you. Mr. Gross.
Yeah, I think the two areas that we've been pretty successful at are twofold. One, our owner-occupied rehabilitation program, which is from a partnership with the Iowa Economic Development Authority. And in that program that we work to identify homes that would be really good potential first-time homes, and then work with those homeowners to secure loans to provide updates or renovations to bring those homes up to code, or to do some enhancements or to modernize those homes. And in the last 10 years, we've had about 30 to 40 of those homes have fallen under that program. I think the other thing we've done a pretty good job, and we've mentioned this before, is partnering with Iowa Valley Habitat with Humanity of locating homes that could be refurbished for first-time homeowners. And actually, at one of our last council meetings, we've just discussed partnering with a developer to start building homes that are designed specifically for first-time homeowners.
Thank you. Mrs. Alvira. The Coralville City Council's role in encouraging first-time homeowners.
I don't know how, so many programs here working, because I have been not living here so much time, but for my experiences, what my partners saying, that they have a very good program. But I believe that we need more programs, because it's a lot of people that they have a problem with the credit, and if we can encourage somebody, to do a home, it's gonna be like you have to work with the credit first, and it's a lot of people with the credit problem here. So we need more programs, I think.
Thank you. Our next question asks, what do you see as the most cost-effective ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions citywide? I believe Mr. Gross, I'm sorry, you are our first respondent on this question. Most cost-effective.
Yeah, I think the three areas to look at, number one would be our transit systems, and making sure that we have a transit system that is being as environmentally sound as possible. The second, I think, is how we not only construct our dwellings and our buildings in the city, but how those are operated, what types of technologies are used. And then the third, I think, is really just kind of taking a pretty serious inventory. And I think this goes back to the earlier question about really what is the carbon footprint of Coralville, and what are the biggest causes of that footprint, and then what are some active ways that we can use to reduce it.
Thank you. Mrs. Elvira, the most cost-effective ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in Coralville. Some ways for the city of Coralville to reduce its effect on the climate through carbon emissions. It's a big question.
I don't know how I can to answer this thing, right now. Sorry.
Thank you. Ms. Dodds?
I think I'll go with transit as well. We've been working a lot towards making our different areas of our community walkability friendly, if that's a word. But having mixed-use buildings so that people in residential areas can be within a walking distance of different things that they might need. We've put in really wide sidewalks so that we can bike. We have bike paths, we have trails, we have the intermodal, we have a wonderful transit system, we have the 360 bus that we go to Cedar Rapids and down to Iowa City and around that we work with ECI COG. And I think if we started focusing more on using public transportation, we could probably, hopefully, increase the routes that our buses do. And I think that's also imperative as we expand into the West Land Use area across 965.
Thank you very much. Our final question for this evening will be, how can we improve the lives of children in Coralville? We'll start with Ms. Elvira. How can we improve the lives of children in the Coralville City?
I think as a parent, we need to be example, and then in school, they need to have the service and a good education. So for the next generation, we have a good community, and to encourage, the children, to use the facilities, that we have already, and to pay the attention, for what we have, here. Because, sometimes, I have my child, myself, and he want to go to Iowa City instead to go to Coralville. So, just encourage them, to use the facility that we have in Coralville, so that we can do better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Dodds?
My biggest concern is food insecurity. I'm very concerned about that. We've, as a council, have really helped our food pantry to expand. They now are in the location of the old post office that we're giving them rent-free so that they have a larger, more centralized location so that people can get to them on a bus route. We had our Parks and Rec department during the summer have free lunches. We have had snacks. We send home backpacks with the kids to make sure that they have food over the weekends. I think it's just, no kid should ever have to get up and wonder where their food's going to come from. And, they can't go to school and learn when they're in that kind of condition. So that is something that worries me a lot. And there's a long way to go, but we're making progress.
Thank you, Ms. Dodds. Mr. Gross?
Well, I have a 14-year-old, 12-year-old, and 11-year-old daughter at home. I'm a school teacher by profession and now a junior high assistant principal. So it's obvious I care a lot about kids. It's what I've made my profession and what I do for a living. And I think when I think about, what can we as a council and as a city do for our kids, I think we can do all we can to provide for them. I think their basic needs, health care. Our city is a major contributor to the free medical clinic, and the free medical clinic does major work on behalf of children. From an educational standpoint, our city years ago dedicated, excuse me, to a program called Coralville Kicks, which provides after-school care and before-school care and intensive assistance to impoverished children in our community, make sure they're getting education opportunities that they need. And as Jill mentioned, from a food security standpoint, our city has been very, very influential in the food pantry here in Coralville. Our city provides a lunch to every single child in Coralville that wants it every single day as summer vacation. There's not a lot of places that do that. That's something that we do because we're committed to making sure that every child has what they need in this community, and then offering affordable and prolific parks and recreation services so that kids can actually be kids and enjoy their childhood.
Thank you all for your responses. At this time, each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. We will begin with Ms. Dodds.
Thank you all for your attention and asking us all these questions and your interest in us. It's very important you make a good decision of who you want to continue to represent you on your city council. I hope that I have the honor of your vote on November 5th, and I have appreciated giving you all of this time this evening to discuss the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gross.
Well, I'd like to first, again, thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. It's very important just from a democratic standpoint that the community can hear from its candidates and have an opportunity to ask questions. So thank you very much for hosting this forum tonight. When I was elected in 2007, I ran on a pretty ambitious platform, and when I was elected in November and then sworn in January, I thought I was going to do all these great big things, and then 4 months later in May, the floods of 2008 came, and I always say there's no pun intended, but kind of washed away a lot of what I wanted to do, and so your vision has to change, and that's where I've really looked at how Coralville has come back stronger than ever and has rebuilt itself after it was one of the worst natural disaster histories, not just in our state but in our country. And I feel like it's very important that we have a council who represents a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different constituencies, and that's one thing I've tried to do in the past 12 years as your city council member, is being someone who's listened and then who's try to use good judgment to make votes that I think will help not just certain parts of our community but all of our communities. So I hope over those last 12 years I've earned your trust and ask again for your vote on or before November 5th again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And with the final word, Ms. Alviera.
I want to all the people that is here, for having me here, and I want you to count on me to be your friend, and I want to work very hard and to demonstrate to a lot of people that nothing is impossible. I can do it with your support, and for my town, if you give me the opportunity, I will do it for you. Thank you for everything that you have been giving to me today.
Thank you all. Thank you to the candidates. Thank you to those in attendance, those watching at home, the City of Coralville for welcoming us into the council chambers, the staff of our local television station for making this video cast, and for making live streaming possible. We would like to remind you that the views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates, and that sponsorship of the forum is not an endorsement of any particular candidate. But do remember to vote on or before November 5th. Thank you and have a good night.